Now, just like with my Jag video, I know that many of you are here just to hear the sound of the car. So to satiate that, we're going to get into the sound, stock versus now, immediately. And then after that, I would recommend sticking around if you're interested in doing this to your Golf, or maybe you're just curious, why did I choose a muffler delete? Why didn't I do a Milltek or something like that? Then I'm going to be answering those questions. Is it legal? Do you lose power? Do you lose performance? Do you lose fuel economy? Does it drone too much? Blah, blah, blah. So we'll get to that in a second, but now, let's hear it. And there it is. Now, the problem, I will say, with doing this is the exact same issue that the Jag had. Because this system does exactly what I wanted, which is really amplify that bass tone and make it rumble, the camera just doesn't pick that up. Or at least it misses a lot of it. Trust me when I say, sitting in this thing, it feels legitimately like a cross between a Subaru WRX and a Nissan GTR. And I'm not saying that from someone who's been to a couple of car shows. I've reviewed a couple of GTRs on the channel, and they were very heavily modified ones with very loud exhausts, like Litchfield models. So to even sound remotely like that, and for those who don't know, aside from that, this is a completely standard Golf. This isn't some supercharged, you know, twin turbo, whatever monster. It's just a Golf R32 with a muffler delete, and that is the result that you get. Now, the first question is going to be, is it legal? So it's a boring question, but let's get to it first because it's important. And chances are I'll probably put a list up here or wherever as to what points of the video you can jump around. Maybe in the description as well. But to answer that question, I can't fully answer that because there are different rules in different countries. So some countries will say yes. Some countries, I've heard that they don't allow you to do anything to a car at all. So it really depends on where you live, and I would recommend checking out your own laws. Here in the UK, it's an interesting situation because it's kind of a yes and no. At the moment, this wouldn't pass an MOT by most places because, simply put, the law states, and again, I'm a mechanic, so I was trained to do MOTs myself. The law states that an MOT tester, and you can look this up online, an MOT tester has to check the condition of the back box. It doesn't have to cut it open and see if there's anything inside, because you're not allowed to do that. An MOT tester cannot change your car in any way. And as a top tip, that's exactly why you shouldn't have furry dice on your rear view mirror, because they can't take it off. Now, most of them probably would for you, but technically they shouldn't touch it, and they will fail you for that, which is why you should never have anything hanging from your rear view mirror. But that's, by the by, just a top tip there. But as far as the exhaust, they can't cut it open, they can't look inside, so they're checking for rust, corrosion, condition. So all I need to do now is get a box and weld it around it. So it's a straight pipe, but it still has a box for them to visually check. Now, of course, there are 3 aspects to your MOT, and I'm sure different countries have a variation on this, but they are the condition of the back box and the exhaust in general, the volume level, which of course is the obvious problem, and the emissions. Now, emissions, I'll spoil it for you, it's not an issue at all. Muffler has little to nothing to do with emissions. It's the cat that does the vast majority of that, which is why I wouldn't recommend necessarily doing a cat delete on any car, really, not if you want it to be legal anyway. But that's not even an issue. The volume is very interesting, because you would think, maybe even from the sound, well, surely that's got to be too loud. I mean, inside the car, again, the camera doesn't fully pick it up, but it is so resonant inside the car. It's wonderful. It's exactly what I wanted it to sound like, and I'm so happy with it. But how could that possibly pass the sound test? Well, granted, I haven't done an actual, volume test on the car, but the great thing is, for an MOT, unless they've changed the rules since I last looked, you have to test the car at 2,500 RPM. Now, interestingly, 2,500 RPM in a Golf R32 is motorway speed, so between 60 and 70 miles an hour. In other words, the speed that you as the driver wouldn't really want it to drone either. I've had this up to that kind of speed a couple of times, and even though I haven't done a motorway run yet, personally I don't care if it drones, but it actually gets quieter. There's a period of time where it's almost like it reaches that prime resonance where it kind of just fades out and it becomes a lot quieter again. And when you first heard me start up the car, you'll notice the startup, it doesn't have a blip system like the Maserati did, but when you start it up, it's got that kind of whom, but then it quiets down pretty quick to a degree which initially kind of disappointed me, actually. I was expecting it to be louder, but it quiets down. And then when you start driving it, it's around like the 1 to 2,000 RPM region that this makes most of its noise. Above 2,000 though, especially if you just got it in drive, it gets so much quieter. So like cruising is perfect in this. And then it's only once you get up around like 3.5, 4, where it starts to really get up into that VR6 kind of mini Maserati sound, which I love. So it's actually pretty perfect for volume. Now, I could be wrong, but I've asked multiple opinions from people inside and outside the car, and they've said it doesn't seem obnoxious at all. It's louder, but it's not obnoxious. And crucially, like I alluded to, that's one of those things. The police will pull over a car that's obnoxious, even if it is legal. You see some kid in a nondescript hatchback that sounds like the exhaust is full of holes. But if you have a car that already sounds good, and you make it sound just that little bit better, most police will admire it rather than pull you over. Look at the Jag I had. The Jag was way louder than this. The Jag used to make the ground shake when you started that thing up. It was like a NASCAR. I never got pulled over once. I never got head shakes. I never got people pulling faces. I never got a single complaint from a neighbor. It was great because it sounded good. It wasn't just loud. There is a difference. You've got to be discerning and shrewd when you choose what car to do what mod to, and that's why I chose to do this to the Golf. The Golf is naturally a deep sound, so enhance that depth. Don't try and make it tinny and super high pitched. In fact, if you look in forums, there are loads of Golf owners who have done the Milltek catback and then want to change it again because they found it too loud. I didn't want to end up in that position, as great as the Milltek sounds. So the next question you might have is, why did I choose it? I think I've fairly, self-explanatory there. I've answered that. Super deep, it keeps the tone, but it increases the volume. Put simply, that's exactly what I wanted. The resonance is absolutely phenomenal at everything up to like 40 miles an hour, which is perfect for me because that was the exact point in time where the car was really boring to listen to. So I'm super happy, exactly the same as the Jag in that way. The last question is, how cost effective is it? Or one of the last questions perhaps you might have. And of course, if you have further questions, just drop them down below and I'll answer them. But in terms of cost effectiveness, it is ridiculously good. This system that I bought wasn't from like an official aftermarket company. It was like a family run business who just make them custom on eBay. It cost me £100 free postage. It came with the tips already, came with the 3 clips. As you'll have probably seen in a little bit of the footage from the garage, we had to work around an issue. The main issue in the case of mine is that the system is supposed to be a sleeve, and it actually does taper down, so it looks like it should sleeve inside the original exhaust. We did manage to do that, but we had to actually modify the stock exhaust to kind of taper it out a little bit to fit around it, because I don't know if they did it deliberately or not, but whoever made it exactly the same bore size. So it couldn't go over or inside it. But as far as cost though, 100 quid, brand new. And the garage, obviously the garage will vary. The car was in there for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, because they had to work around that. It would have been quicker otherwise. And when it came to paying, the guy just said, yeah, 20 quid. Which was great, because they did fantastic work, great problem solving with it. And yeah, I mean, that'll all depend on your mechanic. That'll depend on where you take your car. If you find a good guy, it'll be great. If you find somebody who, you know, charges more, whatever. Worst case scenario though, you shouldn't expect to pay more than 80 quid for fitting. And that's even if it's like £40 an hour. It's like a 2-hour job max. You could do it a lot quicker than that, technically, if you wanted to. And the great thing about this system is, because it's so simple, you're just removing the back box. It's like the last 50 centimeters or so of the system. You could easily do this yourself. If you've got a grinder, some car jacks, obviously some stainless piping and some know-how with a welder, you can make it yourself. Probably cost you like, I don't know, 30, 40 quid. And most of that would just be buying the stainless piping, maybe like 2 meters of stainless pipe or something like that to have a little bit more than you need. So in other words, this is absolutely something you could do yourself, for sure. If you wanted to, it'd be a nice little project. As far as, you know, finishing touches, welding a back box around mine would make it that much easier for the MOT. Volume should be fine. Emissions are going to be fine. The last question you might have though, and you may have skipped forward to this part anyway, is a question which seems to go back and forth depending on who you ask. Does it affect performance? Does it affect throttle response, horsepower, fuel economy, you know, any kind of performance in that way and efficiency? Well, I would have to say that from my personal experience compared to other people's experience, it seems inconclusive. Now, speaking for myself only, I would say absolutely not. I did it to the Jag, I did it to the Golf. I have noticed zero difference in power, zero difference in performance, zero difference in economy, apart from the fact that I'm driving it more and that I'm driving it more spiritedly to hear it. So of course you're going to use more fuel that way. But aside from that, no. On the other hand, I've heard some people say that they've had a car, muffler deleted it and ran it on the dyno twice, and they've lost maybe like 5 horsepower. If that bothers you, maybe don't do it. For me, I couldn't care less. If I put the Golf on the dyno and I've lost 5 horsepower, it means nothing to me. It's a stock R32. I clearly don't care about power. So aside from people who actually care about that, I would say it's nothing you've got to be concerned about. Performance is no different. Fuel economy is no different. It's just a net positive across the board. It's simple, it's small, it's easy to swap out, it's cheap, it sounds fantastic, but it keeps the original character of the car. Doesn't affect the performance, the fuel, the throttle response, the power in any noticeable way at least. And it's still technically legal as long as you do it the right way. And for those who are maybe still thinking, well, you said about fitting a back box, but surely that's a bit of a bodge job. Well, if you look back at that video I did with the Jag had an aftermarket Adamesh kit, which had like motorcycle style mufflers, you know, the long sleeve cylinders. If you look at the unboxing part of that video, you can see straight through. Those mufflers do nothing. They are purely cosmetic, and that's from a big established brand. There are tons of brands. You know, look at Milltek. They have boxes in the system. Do you really think those boxes do anything? Of course not. They're cosmetic to just allow it to pass an MOT. The government knows that, but they don't really care. Because at the end of the day, what really matters is the car safe? Is it harming the environment more? And is it going to fall apart at any moment? None of this, you know, none of doing a muffler delete does that. It doesn't harm the environment more. It doesn't make the car unsafe unless you drive like a moron anyway. And it's not going to fall off as long as it's done properly. So, yeah. There are people who may be uncomfortable with doing it. If you have any kind of uncomfortable attitude or concerns in that way, you should probably just avoid it. You know, go for maybe some full aftermarket kit. That might be better for you. This is a system which does exactly what I wanted. And for me, it ticks every box. The sound, the look, the simplicity, the price, and the fact, and this is a crucial thing, one of the reasons why I left the Golf as stock as possible is for resale value. I want this to be a future collector's car. The mileage is not super low, but the condition is good. It's a nice spec. It's got the wing backs and all that kind of good stuff. So if I ever do come to selling it, I believe R32s are going to go up in value. The Focus RS has, the Clio V6 has, and I think it's going to happen to this as well. It's just a matter of time. So if I have some crazy lowered twin turbo thing, that's not going to happen. But if I have one that's relatively stock with just a sleeved exhaust, the guy who did this exhaust said that he reckons you could just weld the stock one back on again. No issue there. It's just, like I said, ticks every box for me. So overall, that's it for my thoughts on the muffler delete, the silencer delete, the back box delete. I love the fact that people hate the word delete, even though they know full well what it means. But yeah, that's it for my thoughts. For those who have done it themselves, tell me what you think down below. Tell me what you think of the sound. I'm sure you already have. And yeah, any further questions that you might have for me, feel free to drop them down below. But I am extremely happy with how this has turned out, and I don't regret it for a second. But until next time, I'll see you then. And for now, as always, thanks for watching.